May 25th, 1965, Lewiston, Maine. Sonny Liston walked into the ring carrying a secret. He wasn't afraid of Muhammad Ali. He was afraid of the men watching from the crowd, the mob bosses who owned him, who told him what would happen if he won. 1 minute and 44 seconds into round one, Ali threw a punch most people didn't even see. Liston went down, stayed down, took the count, walked away with his life. For 5 years he lived, knowing the truth. Then in December 1970, they found his body. Dead. Heroin needle in his arm. The mob always collects. Sonny Liston was never meant to be a free man. Born into poverty in Arkansas. Exact birth date unknown. Could have been 1930. Could have been 1932. Nobody kept records for kids like him. Grew up picking cotton. Barely literate. By his teens, he'd turned to crime, robbery, assault. Sent to prison. That's where he learned to box. And that's where the mob found him. They saw potential. A big, powerful kid who could hit like a truck. They got him out early, set him up with a boxing career. But there was a price. Sonny Liston didn't own Sonny Liston. The mob did. By 1962, Liston had become heavyweight champion. Destroyed Floyd Patterson in 1 round. Did it again in the rematch. He was the most feared man in boxing. Maybe the most feared man in sports. Nobody wanted to fight him. Opponents would literally have nightmares before facing Liston. But behind the scenes, Liston was still owned. His manager, Pep Barone, had mob connections. His backers were organized crime figures. They controlled his fights, his purses, his future. Liston was a champion, but he was also a slave. Then came Muhammad Ali, young, fast, loud. Everything Liston wasn't. In February 1964, they fought for the first time, Miami Beach. Ali was a 7-1 underdog. Nobody gave him a chance. But Ali did something nobody had done before. He beat Liston, made him quit on his stool after 7 rounds. The unbeatable Sonny Liston had quit, had given up. The mob wasn't happy. They'd lost money, a lot of money. And when the mob loses money, somebody pays. The rematch was scheduled for November 1964, then postponed when Ali needed hernia surgery. Finally set for May 1965. But there was a problem. Nobody wanted to host it. Las Vegas said no, New York said no, Chicago said no. Nobody wanted the mob circus that followed Liston. Eventually, a small town in Maine agreed, Lewiston, population 15,000. They'd host the fight in a youth hockey arena, not Madison Square Garden. Not a major venue, a small town arena in the middle of nowhere. The build-up to the fight was strange. Liston seemed off, quiet, withdrawn. Not his usual intimidating self. Ali was cocky as always, predicting victory, doing his usual trash talk. But people close to Liston noticed something. He seemed scared, not of Ali, of something else. His trainer asked him what was wrong. Liston wouldn't say, just kept quiet, kept training, kept preparing for a fight he didn't want to have. Years later, stories would emerge. Stories about what happened behind the scenes, that the mob had approached Liston, told him the fight was business, that Ali needed to win, that the Nation of Islam which Ali had joined was getting involved in boxing, then there was money to be made with Ali as champion. Young, charismatic, marketable. Liston was none of those things. Liston was a reminder of boxing's dark side. The mob wanted him gone, and they made it clear what would happen if he didn't cooperate. The night before the fight, Liston barely slept. Sat in his hotel room, staring at nothing. His cornermen tried to talk to him, get him focused. But Liston's mind was somewhere else. He was weighing his options. Win the fight and face the consequences, or lose the fight and live. For a man who'd spent his entire life being controlled by others, it wasn't really a choice. It was survival. Fight night. May 25th, 1965. St. Dominic's Arena. 2,500 people in attendance. Small crowd for a heavyweight championship. But the place was packed with mob figures. Organized crime from multiple families. All there to watch their investment. To make sure things went according to plan. Ali entered first. Dancing. Confident. Liston entered looking like a man walking to his execution. His face showed no emotion, but his eyes told a different story. Fear. The referee was Jersey Joe Walcott, former heavyweight champion. Good man, honest referee. But he was about to be part of the most controversial moment in boxing history. The bell rang for round 1. Ali came out dancing, moving, throwing jabs. Liston came forward, slowly, without urgency. Not the aggressive Liston everyone knew. He threw a few jabs, missed, didn't seem to care that he missed. Then, about 1 minute into the round, Ali threw a right hand, a short punch, over Liston's jab. It landed, somewhere on Liston's face, maybe his jaw, maybe his temple. Nobody was quite sure. The punch was fast. Not particularly hard looking, but Liston went down, fell backward, hit the canvas, and stayed there. The crowd erupted in confusion. What had just happened? Had they missed something? Had there been a punch? Ali stood over Liston, screaming at him. "Get up and fight, sucker! Nobody will believe this!" Ali was right. Nobody would believe it, because it looked fake. It looked like Liston had taken a dive, like he'd barely been hit and had decided to just lie down. Jersey Joe Walcott was confused, didn't know what to do. He hadn't seen the punch clearly either. Started counting over Liston, then got distracted, lost count. The timekeeper was counting, Walcott was counting. Nobody knew what the count actually was. Ali wasn't going to a neutral corner. He was standing over Liston, yelling. Walcott tried to move Ali away. Created more confusion. Liston lay on the canvas for about 12 seconds, then got up. Walcott, confused about the count, let the fight continue. Ali immediately attacked, threw a flurry of punches. Liston barely defended, didn't fight back, just covered up. Then Walcott stopped the fight. Technical knockout. Ali wins. 1 minute and 44 seconds. The shortest heavyweight title fight in history. The aftermath was chaos. Reporters were screaming that it was fixed. Fans were booing, throwing things into the ring. Ali was celebrating but also angry. He knew how this looked. Knew people would say it was fake. Liston walked back to his dressing room, silent. Didn't speak to anyone. Didn't explain. Just showered, changed, left. When reporters asked him what happened, he gave vague answers. He hit me. I went down. That was it. No elaboration, no details. The Boxing Commissions investigated, reviewed the film, frame by frame. They found evidence of a punch landing, a short right hand, over Liston's left jab, connecting with his jaw. The punch was real, but had it been hard enough to knock Liston out? That was the question nobody could answer. Ali said yes. Said it was his anchor punch, a short, powerful shot, that Liston had moved into it, making it harder than it looked. Some believed him, most didn't. Liston fought a few more times after that, won some, lost some, but he was never the same. The aura was gone. The fear he'd inspired was gone. By 1970, he was essentially retired, living in Las Vegas, still connected to the mob, still doing whatever jobs they asked him to do, still not a free man. He'd survived the Ali fight, but the mob didn't forget. Didn't forgive. They just waited for the right time. December 30th, 1970. Liston's wife returned to their Las Vegas home after a trip. Found the house had a terrible smell. Went upstairs, found Sonny's body in the bedroom, dead for at least a week, maybe longer. The official cause of death was listed as heroin overdose. A needle was found near his body, but there were problems with that story. Liston's friends said he was terrified of needles, would never inject drugs, preferred pills if he used anything. The needle mark was in his arm, but Liston was right-handed. The mark was on his left arm. How had he injected himself with his non-dominant hand? The police investigation was brief, superficial. They ruled it an accidental overdose. Case closed. But people who knew Liston didn't believe it. His wife didn't believe it. His friends didn't believe it. They believed the mob had finally collected, had finally punished Liston for being a liability, for being connected to the most embarrassing moment in boxing history, for knowing too much about how things really worked. Dead men tell no tales, and Sonny Liston had plenty of tales to tell. The phantom punch debate continues to this day. Was it a legitimate knockout, or was it a fix? The film shows a punch landing, but was it hard enough? Ali maintained until his death that it was real, that he'd knocked Liston out legitimately. Others who were there disagree. Say Liston took a dive, that he'd been ordered to lose, that the mob had threatened him, that he had no choice. And Liston's mysterious death 5 years later, that seems to support the fix theory. Why kill a man unless he knows something dangerous? The truth died with Sonny Liston, but the evidence suggests a tragic story. A man who was never free, who was controlled his entire life, who was forced to throw a fight to save himself, who lived 5 more years carrying that secret, until the people who owned him decided he was no longer useful. Sonny Liston's life was tragic from beginning to end. And the phantom punch? Maybe it was the one moment where Liston made a choice. Chose survival over pride, chose life over glory, for 5 more years at least, until the mob came calling one final time. This is what happens when the mob controls boxing. Liston had no choice, take a dive or die. He chose survival and got 5 more years. Then they killed him anyway. The phantom punch wasn't just controversial, it was a death sentence delayed. If this dark story moved you, hit that subscribe button, smash the thumbs up, share this with someone who needs to know boxing's darkest secrets. Drop a comment about organised crime in sports. Hit that bell for more boxing stories proving sometimes the real fight isn't in the ring. It's surviving the people who control it.